Hello and welcome. We're here at the virtual water cooler, so get your cup, fill up your water cup. We're here to chat with Lisa today. Hey, Lisa.
Hey.
So we are from LitheSpeed, and LitheSpeed is a premier Agile consultancy. We've been doing Agile coaching and training since 2007 as a group, but a lot of us since before then. So we're so glad you're joining us today. We're going to do probably about 45 minutes total on this quick webinar, just hang out, chat about some great ideas to keep your teams high trust, highly connected, and excited as we all pivot to this virtual world. You will be able to earn one Scrum Alliance SEU and one PMI PDU from hanging out with us today. And then you'll also get a link to the recording of this webinar afterward if you'd like to see it again or share it with anybody. If you have any questions, please chat down in the questions chat area and I will be monitoring that. I'm Audrey, by the way. I'm marketing at LitheSpeed, hanging out here with Lisa. And so questions there, other logistics we'll figure out along the way. I would like to have everybody type in the chat where are you watching in from, and that will also help me verify that you can hear me. That is the exciting part. So we'll give them a second, Lisa, and see who's calling in from Virginia, St. Louis. Hey, John. And Madison, Wisconsin, Maryland, all over, South Carolina. Cool. So we've got a great crew here today. And Lisa, I'm going to turn it over to you. So let's kick off.
All right, great. Hey, everybody. My name is Lisa Mabli, and as Audrey mentioned, I work at LitheSpeed as a managing Agile consultant. I am so happy you guys are here for this webinar. Really, I just want this to be relaxed and fun and a break from what you do, but also at the end, something that you can take away and apply in your own workplace. I've adapted this webinar a little bit for the virtual world because it's obviously now way more important that we maintain our connectivity. And you might be wondering why somebody in an Agile consulting firm would be doing a webinar on virtual water coolers and team health, but team health is really important for maintaining business agility, whether you're just on a Scrum team or end-to-end business agility in terms of those communication pathways. So this is just a little webinar on how to not let those wonderful things that you've built up in person as a team fall through the cracks when we're all in this all remote kind of a world. So I'm from Texas. I have been doing the Agile, as we like to call it, since about 2012, and I do really like travel. I am a road warrior, so this is a bit of an adjustment for me, for sure, as I'm sure it is for most of you. I have studied the classics. I speak a few languages. I don't shut up in any of them very well, so forgive me for speaking on and on. And I spent a couple of years at Berkeley developing a mathematical model that nobody uses ever anywhere. So that was good fun, good learning anyway. I do love pancakes. I love my dogs. I apologize if you wind up hearing them in the background. And I love ice cream. So I am going to just dive right into the content. As Audrey mentioned, hopefully you guys have used GoToWebinar before. If you haven't had a chance to find the chat, if you weren't able to answer the initial question about where you're from, just take a second and find that chat. If you have any questions or comments or concerns, feel free to put them in the chat, and Audrey is going to be monitoring the chat board, and she'll pipe in with questions or comments that we should be discussing. So in this world, I know it's all very different, and I think even if we didn't have this webinar, all of us would be feeling a major difference in terms of our connectivity to our teams as we have all moved to a remote situation. So, and those changes may be for the better and they may be for the worse. In my particular case, it was actually for the better because we have so many things in place to stay connected as a remote team now. I feel actually closer to my LitheSpeed team than I did when I was on the road all the time. But it matters because the road to health and happiness in your teams and therefore in your larger organization really is built on celebrating micro wins and celebrating those things together. We think a lot in terms of big changes and scaling Agile and thinking of large organizational shifts and major programs and initiatives to support org health. And I think really you kind of miss the point there when you're not at the team level coming together as a team to celebrate the little stuff that doesn't really take very much effort to do, and it really can bring a smile to someone's face during the course of the day. So um, sorry, I got like my little control box here. So how do micro wins and doing things together actually work? Well, there's a lot of research now, and especially they're doing lots of research in our new kind of universal context of being remote these days, that human connection, so any kind of human connection, actually has physical effects. It can reduce pain, it can reduce the symptoms of stress. There's a hugely high correlation between high blood pressure and inflammation, immune system health, and other health issues, between those things and feeling lonely and feeling isolated. And one of the things that another experiment or another study, I guess, found out, I don't think they were experimenting on humans, at least I hope not. Another study found that people actually live longer the more connected they are to their social networks. And so that, in addition to these things, it's this health and happiness that come through human connectivity that we're trying to target here. The other way to think about this, and this is not just about individuals as just kind of floating out there and in your personal lives, but also at work is extremely important. There's also a bazillion studies about how people feel about their compensation relative to feeling appreciated and feeling like they belong to something. And the results were really quite surprising for the people who were doing this, in that they assumed that compensation was a huge motivator, right? You get paid a lot. And I'm sure at some point that does actually kick in, but given the choice, people actually feel more motivated and therefore perform better when they feel like they're appreciated and when they feel like they belong to something. And so if your teams feel appreciated and like they belong, then they're going to be more motivated to deliver, and they're going to be happier, and then they will perform better. And obviously, if you've got a bunch of teams and a bunch of people performing better, that is going to percolate up to the rest of the organization, and it's ultimately going to lead to more success at work as well. And some things you can do, I know it's hard to do or to think about an enormous organizational change to do these things, but you don't have to do that. If you focus on the people in your immediate sphere and you concentrate on making your little team, and when I say little, you might be a director and your team might be 50 people, you might be a dev manager and your team might be 5 people, but if you can start creating little pockets of counterculture, of really just a culturally happy, trusting teams, then what tends to happen is that becomes the center of gravity for other people, because they look at you and they go, why is that team always smiling? Why are people not upset about having to come to work? Why do they always look like they're not stressed? Why do they tend to get things done more easily? Or if you're in the software world, why do their deliveries always go super smoothly? When's the last time they had an overnight, all-nighter, ordering pizzas in order to get a thing out the door? Why are the releases so boring? Which is a good thing, by the way. People will start to gravitate towards that, and they'll start absorbing by osmosis some of the things that you guys are doing. So even if you can't change your whole organization, you can at least change for the people that you work with. And everybody has the capacity to do that. So where do you start? Well, the key here is to start small. As all things Agile, we like smallness, so no different in this context either. There are many, many, many things that you can do either in the workplace or especially now in a virtual environment. And the first thing you can do is start identifying micro stresses, not just for yourself, but for your team members. So micro stresses kind of gnaw away at us all throughout the day, to the point where we generally don't notice them in any conscious kind of way, but they impact how we feel. And obviously, if you just heard everything I just said, how we feel impacts how we work. So eliminating some of these micro stresses that you have under your control has an outstanding impact on performance ultimately, because it is removing some of those weirdnesses and those odd things that are just kind of grating at you through the day that you're not even aware of. So a couple of them, technical issues on conference calls, do your best to deal with those, or find a different tool, or turn off video if there's bandwidth issues. The idea there is just, we all know what it's like to be dialed into something and everybody sounds like evil robot, or video's not working, or you get booted out, whatever it is. So if that is a recurring theme for your teams, fix it. Find some way to fix it. Another big thing that's happening now is that people feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not, especially managers, and especially managers who like to micromanage, I'm not in everyone's face all day, every day, so I have to send emails. I have to ask for, updates. And so I'm sure I'm not the only one who's experiencing this, where our inboxes are just exploding because people now feel like they have to write everything down. Address that. It's not necessary. There are other things that you can do to maintain communication, and we'll give you some tips on those things later. Meetings that start late or run long, that is completely in your control. And for some people that doesn't bother them, but for other people it does. Uncomfortable home office furniture. This is a huge theme. I'm sure Herman Miller is getting lots of orders these days, but a lot of us were sort of we went from one day to the next with, office furniture that had been designed for ergonomic stuff, to home where you're kind of like scrapping together a card table. And I literally for one of the places I'm sitting on an overturned bucket, which is definitely, I am not advocating that at all. Don't do that. It hurts. But for a 10-minute stand-up, I can sit down. Yes, I do sit down in our stand-ups on a bucket. Not ideal. So these kinds of things are going to be impacting your day. Distractions and interruptions, or for some people, not having any. If you're not used to being alone or working from home, where you may be in a place where you're not distracted all the time. For example, if you live alone or don't have children or don't have barking dogs, that might be a little uncomfortable as well. Getting the environment right, offices especially, too hot, too cold, you have some central thermostat that's 500 miles away telling you whether your office is comfortable or not. It might be too noisy or quiet, it might be too light or dark. These little things do impact us every day. And then there's just this feeling disconnected or feeling way too connected. And that can actually go both ways, and you have to find out what works best for you. Fix those things for yourself, and then actually make action items about fixing them for your teammates. There are a lot, and on the other side, so those are little micro stresses that you can manage. This is not, and again, we're not talking major like organizational shifts and massive change management programs. This is, this is easy stuff, and these are things that are actually going to make a huge difference. The other thing that you can also do that doesn't require an enormous amount of influence even in the organization, and no great roadmaps and plans, is to celebrate some micro wins together. Again, I mentioned tiny, boring releases. They are a thing, so if you've never experienced one, that's something to aim for. Just supporting one another in these kind of bizarre times. I mean, if you wake up in the morning and have your goal for the day just to bring joy to someone's day, believe me, your day and that person's day are going to become a lot better. Finishing tasks more quickly than expected, or somebody removes a blocker, those are huge. Celebrate those things. I'm not saying you have to go out and order a birthday cake, but you can always send somebody a thank you, or call them out in a meeting or something like that. Like, hey, I noticed that got done more quickly. Or if somebody says they got something done more quickly, just applaud that. It makes people feel good. I think we've all become much more aware of who our teammates are now as people than we probably ever were in many cases. So it's important now, to think about, where is this this overlap between personal stuff and work stuff. There is no reason you can't celebrate a birthday or a work anniversary or a dog's birthday, whatever it is that's important to people on your teams. Find out more about your teammates and what's important to them, and then celebrate those things. For me personally, you don't need to celebrate my birthday. I don't care. If you celebrate my dog, I will love you forever. So these are things that, just to understand your teammates better and celebrate those little things. Go learn something new, something else you can do. That is a huge, it's a huge micro win. It's huge in the universe, in the grand scheme of things, to learn stuff, but it's also a micro win. You might have just learned how to operate the chat in GoToWebinar. Maybe you've never even been on GoToWebinar before. Pat yourself on the back. Go do something nice for yourself, or tell somebody about it and go celebrate it together. getting caught up on your email, this kind of goes back to managing the micro stresses. Those are very well balanced. Just going in and organizing stuff, especially now. In the time that it might have taken you to walk to a meeting, you can actually go in and maybe knock out a couple of things. And then making sure that you have tools that work consistently and work well. And that can be anything from your office furniture to tools that you're using for work or connectivity tools, whatever it is. But if you got through a day, for example, as a team where nobody tried to, you can gamify it totally. Nobody had to say, hey, I see you're talking, but you're on mute. Or if you have a tool where you got through the entire day and it never crashed, nobody had any issues, celebrate those things as a team. And I know it feels kind of silly in the beginning, but once you get in the habit of recognizing, which is the hard part, recognizing things that are worthy of celebration and then actually celebrating those in some small way, you'll find out that this is all very, very conducive to not only coming together as a team, but having happy people on your team, and then therefore being able to perform better at work. I'm going to pause for a second and turn it over to Audrey to let me know whether there's anything in the chat we should address.
Yeah, Lisa, we are loving the starting small and celebrating micro wins in the chat. I would like to say if anyone has a micro stress they have already overcome virtually, or they have some micro wins, pop them in the chat. We'd love to crowdsource some ideas and some fixes. And I will add, Lisa, my husband's company actually went and got their office chairs and drove them out to all the folks at home who were complaining about back problems this week. So,
Wow.
and that has made such a huge difference. So just things like that, that you think there's no solution, my back hurts, well, go do something about it and make your team happy. So we'll wait on some answers at a different break, but please proceed.
Okay. Okay. So, we kind of talked about, and hopefully this all kind of makes sense in how it comes together of the, ensuring that your team feels connected. Feeling connected will make them happy. Feeling that togetherness is often achieved best is achieved best by celebrating things together. And the best thing that you can do is celebrate the small stuff together. So think small, do sweat the small stuff. Every day you should be seeing these tiny, tiny, tiny little things that you can celebrate together, and make it a point to do that. And it doesn't have to be turned into a ritual, but a kind comment in a meeting is the best way to brighten someone's day, because you kind of never know what's going on or how stressed they are here. So I want to give you some tips for how to make all of those things happen. And the key here is to think visually, because humans are social creatures and we're visually oriented. 2/3 of us learn best by visualizing something. This is also, if you come from an agile environment, you know that visualization of your work and dependencies and all these things are super important. And the reason for that is that we are visual information gatherers for the most part. So if it's not something visual, it tends not to stick. We tend not to internalize it in a way that's meaningful or as meaningful if we don't see something. So a couple of tips and tricks here. Insist that everyone turn on the camera while you're having a conference call. Now, obviously, if you've got 80 people and 80 cameras, you might run into bandwidth issues. But for example, we had a class the other day, and we didn't need everybody to have their camera on at all times, although it's a lot more comfortable, believe me, when you're up here doing a webinar to know that there are faces out there, and if I can't see anybody, it's a little weird. But if you can insist that everybody at least turn on their camera while they're introducing themselves, and then they can turn off the camera if you need to. But in most cases, and this holds true even when all of this is over and you're back in the office and you have remote workers who are remote all the time, either you're not co-located or they just work from home, make sure that your cameras are turned on during your conference calls all the time. Have that be a requirement. If people are nervous about what's in their background or whatever, you can use Zoom where you can put a virtual background in there. And yes, do you have to get a little bit dressed? Probably, or maybe not. Maybe that's your team norm that nobody cares if you're in your pajamas. So another great tip, going back to managing these micro stresses, is make sure that your technology works before you have a conference call. So get on a couple minutes earlier, especially if it's a larger call. check your audio and video, and then that will help people when they're coming in to feel like things are going a little more smoothly. We all saw, I think, probably the Zoom news about people who were crashing. So even just getting your settings right so that people can't do that kind of thing in your meetings is super duper important. Setting up a virtual happy hour or a team lunch or something is I've heard of this, a lot of people are doing this now, and we at LitheSpeed actually do it as well. But it's an opportunity just to sit and socialize with someone. You're not going to run into somebody in the break room or stand in line behind the microwave. Although here, occasionally at lunch, that does happen. There's a line of two for the microwave. So you can set those things up on a regular kind of, in a regular kind of way, and just turn on your camera and sit and chat with one another and just have a beer. We did that a couple of weeks ago at LitheSpeed, and it was really, really, really awesome. So you're going to have to probably develop some team agreements here. And this is going to be around, like, for example, this asynchronous communication that we have. The best ways in which to send people information or get information from people. It may not be email, and it probably isn't email. There are going to have to be agreements about what your core working hours are. There's a great publication out there by GitLab that they actually have in a PDF, a downloadable PDF now, about, if you've just been involuntarily converted to a remote worker, or if you do work remote, or if you're just under the normal course of things, you have remote teams. It's a great guide for how to have an all remote organization, because they are completely 100% remote. And part of that is understanding that you don't all have to be online at the same time. The 9 to 5 is a construct that doesn't have to exist. So exploring those kinds of things with your team and figuring out what's acceptable and reasonable and workable for you is really important. And finally, those support networks are also very important. I know that my first week here, I was struggling a lot, and I knew that we had, everybody kind of checked in on me, and I knew that I could reach out and just put something out there that said, hey guys, like, cut me some slack today, didn't sleep, I'm not adjusting, my bucket's getting uncomfortable, I'm not adjusting well to working from home. So, and just having that support network and knowing that people got that, and, a couple of folks on the team were like, yeah, this sucks for me too. And so just fostering those kinds of things is super important. Creating a board, if you're already using Jira or Trello or something like that, anything that you have currently, create a board to celebrate your wins. It's awesome to visualize them. Create a board for joys and successes and birthdays or whatever it is, all the happy stuff that's happening. And that way, if somebody is feeling like they need to go get a little injection of happiness and connectivity and togetherness with their teams, they have some place to look. And you could even, if you do daily stand-ups, you could even look at that board as well. And then finally, if you do have longer meetings, if they're longer than an hour or two, set aside 5 minutes for a daily or an hourly gratitude. And then you can also add that to your happy board. And that is not, you don't necessarily have to celebrate heroics, but, if somebody does anything that's kind or good or joyful or is a small win to celebrate, just call that out verbally during those meetings. And that's all again, these kinds of things, believe it or not, will actually transform your organization, and they don't require a change management plan. So how do we at LitheSpeed stay happy and healthy? Well, you've probably seen Coco in the news recently. And this is actually a screenshot that I took a while ago. Actually, it tells you exactly when I took the screenshot, doesn't it? Oh, no, it was just on a Monday. So what you'll see there at the top is a meeting going on, basically, and Coco is, and I am not paid by Coco, by the way. I just want to advocate for this tool without getting anything in return for it. It's just a great little tool. So say I wanted to go into the room where everybody was in, I would just click that link that's at the bottom of the room, and I pop into the room, and I have the option of turning on my headset so I can hear and turning on my microphone so I can speak. And then you can see those little computers on the virtual desk there. Those are actually links to websites. So for that particular meeting, there was probably something that was bookmarked. We were probably talking about a board, and that is just easy to access while they're there. So you pop into the room, your links are right there, You can talk and see, you can turn on your camera if you want, you can screen share, and then when you're done, you just click on the room that you want to go into to get out of that room. And it's very, very, very nice. This goes back to number one, feeling connected, and number two, having that visual manifestation of what a virtual office might look like. And I cannot tell you what a difference this makes to feeling connected and feeling more physically connected to the team. So we use Coco a lot. We're all in there. We, as I mentioned, have a weekly virtual happy hour. I think we're going to try to put a virtual lunch on the calendar. We also use Lean Kit pretty religiously, so we don't have to email everyone and ask questions or update people. You can just go and pull that info, and I apologize for the typo there, but you can just go pull that information from Lean Kit or any other, Kanban board tools that you may have, and you can see what you need to know. We do have cameras on for every call that we have. We have a morning sync. Every morning we meet, and just for a half hour, it's like a very quick 1 minute each, a stand up, and then we have our hourly gratitude during long meetings. So in summary, it's all about the appreciation and the connectivity that is going to make people motivated even at work, and to feel like they're a part of a team. And when they feel part of the team, they're happier, they're physically healthier, and they will actually perform better. So whether you care about performance or not, you should care that your teammates are happy and healthy. The other thing is that happy, healthy teams are a lot more resilient to setbacks, which is also quite interesting. That this is a stressful time. There are probably projects and things that may not be going exactly as planned or exactly as we thought they might a month ago, simply because of the challenges that we're facing now. But if you're in a happy, healthy, trusting team, as a team and as human beings, you can actually weather those storms a lot better. If you create this little micro counterculture with your own team, or even at home, or just with a couple of people, believe me when I tell you, it will spread. People will want to know what you're doing, and people will want to implement some of these things themselves. And then if you start scaling that in small increments, so if it's your team and maybe you grab another Scrum team, or you've got a person in another group or another part of the organization who maybe also has a team that might want to try some of these things, you guys got to start banding together, and then it's just going to take off like wildfire. And before you know it, your entire culture, most of your tribe of the people that you interact with most often, are going to wind up making these changes, and you're going to find that coming to work, or just even waking up during the day, is going to be a lot more fun and a lot more meaningful to you. So that is all I have, and I will turn it back over to Audrey.
All right, I will take the first question, because we're wondering, is Coco similar to Zoom? And it's not, in that Zoom is really a meeting software and Coco is a visual workspace, so it integrates with other meeting softwares, although there is a video feature. But it's more showing where you are during the day and chatting with folks. And so if you have other ideas about micro stresses you've overcome or micro wins, feel free to pop those in the chat. I'll come back to some ideas people have stuck in. But first, a question for Lisa. Someone here, Chris, works in a controlled environment and cannot use cameras during meetings. So do you have ideas to improve interaction and engagement when you can't use your cameras?
Yeah, so even just if you can't use your camera, but you are able to upload a profile video, try using something that speaks to your personality, or that is especially you. Or if you really can't reveal your identity, just have it be a silhouette or something. That's fine too. But I recently just got off a call. And I'm still laughing about it. So if that tells you what kind of joy this brought, this guy had purchased a bunch of life-size cutouts of different characters, some of them real and some of them cartoons, and he had about 12 of them stacked up behind him. So when he had his camera on, you would see him, and then you would see this crowd of John Wayne and Dilbert, and just Marilyn Monroe, and this whole group of people, and that was really, really, really funny. And so I think if you can do something creative to represent who you are, and just have that be your profile picture, even if you can't turn on your camera, and then update it regularly so people are surprised, it will provide at least some version of you that is real for them to feel connected to.
Great. And if anyone else has some ideas for Chris, feel free to stick them in. We'll crowdsource. Let's see. Someone was on this call on their iPhone and they were reminding us it's really important to get up and walk around, go outside and get some exercise. So there we go. Um, we have, let's see, any advice for new joiners to get them onboarded in this remote working environment? Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, that's great. Really, really, really difficult, especially if you're in a job where you tend to, part of your onboarding might be to shadow somebody for the day. So that can be really hard. But again, all of these principles actually apply. So, I think entering a job in this environment is going to be so different because if you're entering a job where in a few months you're going to be meeting those people in person, you're going to find that it's going to be a completely different experience, and you're probably going to need a whole new orientation. So I would say that if you're not going to be, if it's not a remote position, onboarding people, you're probably going to have to do it twice because you're going to have to onboard them, introduce them to the team and the tools and all those things. But then when we all go back to the office, you're going to have to kind of go through a lot of that again. You're going to have to go through a walking tour of the office and have people shake hands. So you're going to have to do parts of that twice. As far as learning the tools, I mean, it's kind of one of the benefits. I mean, I can't tell you how many onboarding things I've had to do where I had to go to a 2-day orientation and I'm sitting in a giant room with a bunch of other people watching a video. Well, now you can watch that video with popcorn on your couch. So I think there's some silver linings here. Your HR videos can now be enjoyed in your yoga pants with a snack. So
That's truly
uh, and
um,
I'm trying to make light of it, but you're going to have to work ways around it. It shouldn't be an issue in terms of learning the tools and learning the business, but in terms of getting to know the people, I think that's where you're going to have basically a second one once you're all together in person.
I'll add a little bit to that. Since LitheSpeed, we're really a remote team, also giving that person a buddy where they are always kind of on video and sitting together through the day, even when, they're in different meetings or different purposes, just a little buddy. Yep.
Oh,
Okay.
that
And
was
we
great. And being onboarded at LitheSpeed, and that's another great thing too, which just thinking of our own LitheSpeed onboarding. I mentioned Lean Kit before. Again, I'm not advocating any of these tools. We don't get paid by any of these folks. I'm also a huge fan of Jira. Um, but if you have a board, again, it's all about visualization. If you have a huge onboarding process to go through, create a board for that person with little cards that have all of the steps and all of the things they need to do and have them own that. They can move it from left to right when things are completed. They know who to reach out to. So if you can create a really nice board so they can, and again, those boards, and we talk a lot about boards in the Agile universe. If you think about how good it feels to get something done, and you then also have all of your tasks on a board, every time you move one of those tasks from left to right, you are getting a little jolt of really feel good brain juice. So that is another great reason to use boards to visualize your work, because you feel and have small tasks, because every time you move them to the next status towards done, it feels good. And that's not just me talking because I'm like OCD type A. I mean, literally your brain chemistry changes, scientifically proven to happen. So having a board for that person, having a board for your teams to move stuff across is super important. Also a great tip for your kids, get their Kanban boards up and running.
absolutely. Okay, let's talk about some wins. So thanks, Chris. Chris's win is that his team of Scrum Masters have regular coffee breaks throughout the week to check in with each other. So they've
Nice.
been having success staying connected that way. And Matthew has said that sharing vacation pictures to introduce new team members to different places virtually. So he's a
Oh,
photographer, it works, and stick in a personal narrative. That's been
cool.
awesome.
And
And
I'm
his,
going to add one thing to that. Audrey, who's on the phone here, fielding your questions, actually just got pictures, asked us all to send selfies of what our workstations are, so that we can get to know one another a little better that way. I mean, obviously, you guys, you can see the background here, but what you don't tend to see is what I'm looking at. And so that was really cool too, just to see that collage of what everybody's workspace actually looked like.
it was fun. Um, Also, so talking kind of about gratitude and your hourly gratitude, Matthew's company has virtual thank you or job well done pre-made PDF templates so that you can send those to folks as a pick-me-up. That's
Ooh,
awesome.
great idea.
And then Erica on Asynchronous Communication said that It's just a little story. A coworker called her out for sending emails on a Saturday, but it seems like they communicated through this and she agreed, or they agreed she could send these, but she would expect her answers during business hours. And that person's also in a different country. So I think that's highlighting communication is key, and there are compromises and it works out.
And I think if you're a manager, I know when I was a manager, if something came to me, I would just send out an email, and I realized, and this is something, this may be a micro stress for your teams if you are, or even if you're not managing them, but know that as a manager, if someone that reports to you gets an email from you at 10 o'clock at night, they're going to think they need to respond to it unless you expressly state that they do not. So as a manager, I used to send out emails all the time, but I would also remind my team either in the email and or verbally that just because you get an email from me at 10 at night or on a Saturday at 2 does not mean you need to respond to it. And in fact, I will be mad at you if you do. So never respond to my emails outside of normal working hours, because that's not my expectation. If you, as a manager, assume that your team knows that, you are probably going to run into trouble. So if you're doing that, that would be a great way to relieve one micro stress for your teams. Just be very explicit that just because you send it out at 10 p.m. doesn't mean they need to respond to it at 10 p.m.
All right, if you have any last minute questions, stick them in. We've got a couple more here we'll answer. Oh, this isn't a question. It says, what's been working great for me is shaking up my routine every once in a while because it feels like a brand new day every time. Yes.
That's brilliant. The best piece of advice I got when I was struggling during that first week was from one of our teammates who said, and this is why I now have a bucket downstairs, was you've got to get up and move around. Just change your location throughout the day. So in the mornings, I take my calls, at the kitchen table. At another time, I have a stand up on my bucket out on the porch, and then sometimes I'm in here. So it's just changing your environment is a lot, especially if you're used to moving from meeting to meeting, because your brain kind of has that anticipation that you're going to have a different view shed throughout the day and not looking at one single wall. So yeah, great advice.
Yes. Oh, and the pet owners, Matthew said they all have a doggy break where they take them on walks at the same time, maybe share pictures. That's fun.
Oh,
We would love that.
Awesome.
Great idea. Okay, let's take one more question just to kind of wrap up. Maria has summed it up here, I feel like, in this question. So thanks everyone for joining. I'll say that because I know some will drop off before our last question, but we'll wrap it up at the end. Maria asks, do you have some advice in dealing with individuals who are resisting being connected at this time?
Yes. I can tell you what I would do if there was a person on my team who was resisting being connected. I would find out, if it's not me, I would find out who the person is on the team that they're the closest to. And I would enlist the help of that person to find out why the person doesn't want to be connected. Because for me, that says there's something else probably going on, and it would be great for that person, and it would be great for your team to find out how to, while respecting the person's, privacy and personal preferences, also to make sure it's not negatively impacting the team. If it's not negatively impacting the team or your deliveries or the work and everybody's happy, don't change it. It's totally fine. If it is an issue and you think it's something of just maybe there's just something you're not seeing, I would try to figure out how that is, and in a supporting way, not in a critical way, but just we've talked a lot in here about support and reaching out and feeling a part of things. So I would try to find someone that person is closest to on the team to reach out and kind of just check in, and not in a, hey, what's up? Why don't you want to be connected? But just a, hey, how's it going? And kind of ask, just throw the lifeline out there to let that person know that people do care.
Wonderful. Thanks, Lisa. If you do have some more questions for Lisa or the team, you can see her email address down at the bottom of the slide, or training@LitheSpeed.com. Thanks everybody for hanging out at our virtual water cooler today. It was really fun, and We look forward to seeing you on another round of this. So I think we're going to end it there for today.
And let
Lisa,
me,
thank you so much for your time. Go ahead.
yeah, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I post a lot of stuff of events that are coming up for LitheSpeed. If you like this webinar, we have coaching circles that are free and regular every other Monday at this point. So I post a lot of that stuff on LinkedIn. So if you want more information, or if you just want to hang out, or if you have additional questions, connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm the only one with my name, and my LitheSpeed address is the one you would need to use if they ask you for that. So.
All right. Thanks again. Everybody have a great day. See you around.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Stay happy and healthy. Bye.
Bye-bye.